Bear cub, squeezed in a supermarket cart. Corral. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The parking lot lights flickered in the cold evening air. Maya Chen pushed her shopping cart toward her car, her 6-month-old baby Riley sleeping peacefully in the carrier. The supermarket was busy tonight, with families rushing to grab groceries before the weekend storm hit. Maya didn't notice the small brown shape moving between the parked cars. A bear cub, no bigger than a house cat, wandered away from the forest edge that bordered the shopping center. The little animal sniffed at dropped French fries and candy wrappers, its tiny nose working overtime. Riley stirred in the carrier, making soft baby sounds. Maya smiled and adjusted the blanket around her daughter. She had no idea that 3 teenage boys were watching from near the cart return area. "Look at that thing," whispered Jake, pointing at the cub. His friends Marcus and Tyler gathered closer. They had been hanging around the parking lot for hours, bored and looking for trouble. The cub wandered closer to the metal cart corral, drawn by the smell of spilled soda. Its mother was nowhere to be seen. Maybe she was still searching for food deeper in the woods, trusting her baby to stay close to their den. "Should we call someone?" Tyler asked, but Jake was already moving. "Nah, let's have some fun first." Jake grinned. He picked up an empty bottle and threw it near the cub. The little animal jumped and let out a scared whimper. Maya was loading her groceries into the trunk, completely focused on organizing her bags. Riley watched the parking lot lights dance above her, her tiny fingers reaching toward the bright colors. She couldn't talk yet, but her eyes were always alert, always watching everything around her. The 3 boys surrounded the frightened cub, laughing as it tried to run between their legs. Each time it almost escaped, one of them would block its path. The cub's breathing became fast and panicked. "Push it into the carts," Marcus suggested, pointing at the metal corral where shopping carts were stored. Jake grabbed the cub by its scruff, the way he had seen people handle cats. But bear cubs are heavier and stronger. The little animal twisted and cried out, a sound that cut through the parking lot noise. That cry reached Riley's ears. The baby turned her head toward the sound, her face changing from sleepy contentment to concern. Even at 6 months old, something deep inside her recognized distress. Maya was still busy with her groceries, her back turned to the cart area. Other shoppers walked by, but no one seemed to notice the 3 teenagers tormenting the small animal 50 feet away. Jake shoved the cub between 2 shopping carts, squeezing it into the narrow space. The metal bars pressed against the cub's sides as it struggled to break free. Its cries became more desperate, echoing off the surrounding cars. "Get your phone out," Jake told Tyler. "This is going viral." But something was happening that none of them expected. Riley began to fuss in her carrier, her small voice growing louder. She pushed against her blanket and tried to sit up, her eyes locked on the cart area where the terrible sounds were coming from. The cub was trapped now, its small body pressed between the cold metal. Every time it tried to move, the bars cut into its fur. Fear filled its dark eyes as the 3 boys stood over it, their laughter mixing with its cries. Riley's fussing turned into something else. Not crying, but a sound Maya had never heard from her daughter before. A determined, urgent noise that made every parent nearby turn their heads. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Maya asked, finally turning around. But Riley wasn't looking at her. The baby's entire attention was focused on something across the parking lot, something her mother couldn't see yet. The cub's mother was still missing. The 3 boys were getting bolder, and a 6-month-old baby was about to do something that would change everything. Maya finally turned around completely when Riley's sounds became impossible to ignore. Her daughter was making noises she had never heard before. Not crying, not babbling, but something urgent and purposeful. Riley's tiny hands were reaching toward the cart area, her whole body straining against the carrier straps. "What are you looking at, baby girl?" Maya whispered, following her daughter's gaze. That's when she saw them. 3 teenage boys clustered around the shopping cart corral, their phones out, laughing at something trapped between the metal bars. Maya's heart sank as she realized what was happening. The bear cub was barely visible now, squeezed so tightly between 2 carts that only its small brown head poked out. Its eyes were wide with terror, and small whimpering sounds escaped its mouth every few seconds. The boys had pushed more carts around it, creating a prison of metal wheels and wire baskets. "Oh my God," Maya breathed, her hands shaking as she reached for her phone to call for help. But Riley was doing something incredible. The baby had somehow managed to unbuckle one of her carrier straps with her tiny fingers. She was pulling herself up, trying to climb out of the carrier toward the trapped animal. Her face showed a determination that seemed impossible for someone so young. Jake was directing Tyler to get a better angle with his phone camera. "Make sure you get its face when it really starts panicking," he said, pushing another cart closer to the cub. The metal scraped against the animal's ribs, and it let out a sharp cry of pain. That cry hit Riley like lightning. The baby managed to free her other arm and was now leaning forward in her carrier, making sounds that were almost like words. "Ah, ah, bah," she called out, her voice carrying across the parking lot. Marcus looked up from his phone. "Did you guys hear that?" "Hear what?" Jake asked, still focused on tormenting the cub. "That baby over there, it's making weird noises." Tyler glanced toward Maya's car and shrugged. "Babies make noise, so what?" But Riley wasn't making normal baby noise. She was calling to the cub, her voice getting stronger and more insistent. Other shoppers in the parking lot began to notice. An elderly man loading groceries into his trunk stopped and stared. A woman pushing her own cart slowed down to listen. Maya was frantically dialing numbers on her phone, trying to reach animal control, the police, anyone who could help. But her calls weren't going through. The cell towers must be overloaded from the coming storm. The cub heard Riley's voice and turned its head toward the sound. For a moment, its terrified expression changed. The panic in its eyes softened, replaced by something like recognition. It made a small sound back, not a cry of fear, but almost an answer. Riley's face lit up. She pushed harder against her remaining straps, her small body rocking back and forth in the carrier. She was trying to get to the cub, and nothing was going to stop her. Jake noticed the exchange between baby and cub and laughed cruelly. "Look, it thinks it has a friend." He picked up a pebble and flicked it at the cub's nose. The animal flinched and whimpered. That was when Riley did something that made everyone in the parking lot freeze. The baby let out a sound that was part cry, part roar, part something that seemed to come from somewhere deep and ancient. It wasn't a human sound at all. It was the sound of an animal protecting its young, defending its pack, calling for help in a language older than words. The sound echoed off the cars and buildings, seeming to grow louder instead of fading. Several car alarms went off in response. Dogs in nearby neighborhoods began howling. Even the 3 teenage boys stopped what they were doing and looked around nervously. "What the hell was that?" Tyler whispered. Maya stared at her daughter in shock. Riley had never made a sound like that before. The baby's face was flushed red with effort, her small chest rising and falling rapidly. But her eyes were still locked on the trapped cub, and she was still trying to break free from her carrier. The cub responded immediately. It began struggling harder against the carts, its small paws scratching at the metal bars. But instead of the panicked thrashing from before, its movements seemed more focused, more determined, as if Riley's call had given it new strength. That's when Maya noticed something that made her blood run cold. Fresh paw prints in the parking lot dust. Big paw prints, leading from the forest edge toward the shopping center. The mother bear wasn't missing after all. She was close, he's very close, and getting closer. Maya grabbed her carrier and started moving toward the cart area, her heart pounding. She had to get to those boys before they found out just how dangerous their game had become. But Riley was fighting her every step, trying to twist out of the carrier toward the cub. The baby's strange cry came again, even louder this time. And from somewhere in the darkness beyond the parking lot lights, something answered back. A deep, rumbling sound that made the ground seem to vibrate. The sound of a mother bear who had found her baby's scent and was following it home. Jake, Marcus, and Tyler were too busy with their phones to notice the approaching danger. They had no idea that their cruel game was about to become something much more serious. But Riley knew. Somehow, the 6-month-old baby understood what was coming. Her cries became more urgent, more insistent. She was trying to warn everyone, trying to make them understand. The mother bear's footsteps grew closer in the darkness. Heavy, deliberate, filled with purpose. She had caught her cub's scent mixed with human scent and fear. Every maternal instinct in her body was on fire. Maya was running now, carrying Riley toward the cart area, praying she could reach the teenagers before it was too late. But she was still 50 yards away when the first massive shadow appeared at the edge of the parking lot. The mother bear stepped into the light, her dark fur glistening under the fluorescent bulbs. She was huge, easily 6 feet tall on her hind legs, with muscles that rippled under her thick coat. Her eyes scanned the parking lot until they found what she was looking for. Her cub, trapped and crying, surrounded by humans who smelled of aggression and cruelty. The bear's lips pulled back from her teeth in a snarl that would haunt everyone who heard it. She dropped to all fours and began moving toward the cart corral with deadly intent. That's when Jake finally looked up from his phone and saw Death walking toward him on 4 massive paws. Jake's face went white as paper. The phone slipped from his hands and clattered on the asphalt. "Guys," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Guys, we need to run. Now." Marcus and Tyler were still focused on recording the trapped cub. "What are you talking about?" Marcus laughed. "This is the best video we've ever—" He turned around and saw the mother bear. The laughter died in his throat. The bear was moving with terrifying purpose, her massive head swaying from side to side as she tracked the scent of her baby. Each step brought her closer to the 3 boys who had been tormenting her cub. Her claws scraped against the pavement, leaving deep scratches in the concrete. Tyler dropped his phone and stumbled backward. "Oh God! Oh God! Oh God!" he chanted, his legs shaking so badly he could barely stand. But something incredible was happening. Riley, still strapped in her carrier as Maya ran across the parking lot, was making those strange sounds again. Not the desperate cries from before, but something softer, more melodic. Almost like she was singing to the approaching bear. The mother bear heard the baby's voice and slowed her charge. Her massive head turned toward the sound, confusion replacing some of the rage in her dark eyes. This wasn't the threatening noise she expected from humans. This was something else entirely. Maya was close enough now to see everything clearly. Her daughter was reaching toward the mother bear with tiny, outstretched hands, making sounds that seemed to calm the enormous animal. It was impossible, but it was happening right before her eyes. "What's she doing?" Maya whispered to herself, still running, but watching in amazement as her 6-month-old daughter somehow communicated with a wild bear. The 3 teenagers were frozen in terror. Jake tried to back away from the cart corral, but his legs wouldn't obey him. Marcus had wet himself and was making small whimpering sounds. Tyler was trying to climb onto one of the shopping carts, but his hands were shaking too badly to get a grip. The mother bear was now only 20 feet from her trapped cub. She could see her baby squeezed between the metal bars, could smell its fear and pain. Her maternal instincts screamed at her to attack the humans who had hurt her child, but Riley's voice was doing something magical. The baby was singing now, a wordless lullaby that seemed to float across the parking lot like music. Other shoppers had stopped to listen, drawn by the haunting beauty of the sound. An elderly woman named Sarah, who had been loading her groceries nearby, felt tears streaming down her face. "I've never heard anything like it," she whispered to her husband. "That baby is singing to the bear." The mother bear stopped completely, her huge form trembling with conflicted emotions. Part of her wanted to tear apart the humans who had tormented her cub, but this small human was singing to her, calling to her in a language that seemed older than civilization itself. Riley's carrier was bouncing as Maya ran, but the baby didn't seem to notice. She was completely focused on the bear, her tiny voice growing stronger and more confident. She was telling a story without words, sharing something that only she and the bear could understand. The trapped cub heard its mother's presence and began struggling again. But now its cries weren't just panic. They were calling back to Riley, creating a 3-way conversation between baby, cub, and mother bear that left everyone watching in stunned silence. Maya finally reached the cart area, gasping for breath. She was close enough to touch the 3 terrified teenagers, close enough to see the mother bear's massive claws and powerful jaw. But instead of fear, she felt something else entirely. Wonder. Her baby daughter was singing a lullaby to a wild bear, and the bear was listening. The mother bear took another step forward, but this time it wasn't aggressive. She was moving carefully, almost gently, her eyes fixed on Riley with something that looked like recognition. "She knows," Maya breathed. "Somehow, she knows that Riley is trying to help." Jake found his voice again, but it came out as a terrified squeak. "Please," he begged, though he wasn't sure who he was talking to, the bear, the baby, or God himself. "Please don't let it kill us." The mother bear heard his fear and turned her massive head toward him. For a moment, the rage returned to her eyes. This human had hurt her baby. This human deserved punishment. But Riley's song grew louder, more insistent. The baby was leaning forward in her carrier now, reaching toward the bear with both hands. Her message was clear even without words. Don't hurt them. Help your baby instead. The mother bear looked from Riley to her trapped cub and back again. A decision was forming in her primitive but intelligent mind. This tiny human was not an enemy. This tiny human was trying to help. Maya made a choice that would haunt her dreams for years to come. She unstrapped Riley from the carrier and lifted her daughter toward the mother bear. "No," Sarah shouted from across the parking lot. "Don't give her the baby." But Maya wasn't giving Riley to the bear. She was letting her daughter do what she had been trying to do all along. She was letting Riley help. The baby reached out with her small hands, not toward the mother bear, but toward the trapped cub. Her fingers were just long enough to touch the animal's small paw where it poked through the metal bars. The moment Riley's skin touched the cub's fur, something extraordinary happened. The cub stopped struggling and looked directly into Riley's eyes. The baby smiled, not the random smile of an infant, but a knowing, purposeful expression that seemed to contain wisdom far beyond her months. The mother bear saw the connection between her baby and the human baby. She saw the gentleness in Riley's touch, the love in her eyes. And she understood. These two babies belonged together somehow. They were meant to help each other. The enormous bear stepped forward and began carefully moving the shopping carts aside with her powerful paws. She was freeing her cub, but she was being guided by a 6-month-old human baby who somehow knew exactly what needed to be done. Jake, Marcus, and Tyler watched in shock as the scene unfolded. The bear that should have killed them was instead working alongside the baby they had ignored. They were witnessing something that would change their understanding of the world forever. One by one, the metal carts rolled away. The mother bear was incredibly careful, making sure not to hurt her cub or the human baby who was still touching its paw. Her massive claws, which could have torn a person apart, moved with surgical precision. Riley never let go of the cub's paw. Even as the animal was freed and able to move around, the baby kept that connection. The cub seemed to understand and stayed close, pressing against Riley's tiny hand. Maya was crying now, tears of fear and amazement streaming down her face. Her daughter was having a conversation with wild animals, and she was watching it happen. The mother bear finally pulled the last cart away, and her cub scrambled free. But instead of running to its mother immediately, the small animal turned to look at Riley one more time. It made a soft sound, almost like "thank you" in bear language. Riley responded with her mysterious song, and the cub touched its nose to her palm in what could only be described as a kiss. That's when they heard the sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police. Help was coming, but it might arrive too late to see the miracle that was happening in the parking lot. The mother bear heard the sirens too. Her wild instincts told her to flee, to take her baby and disappear back into the forest before the humans with their loud noises and bright lights arrived. But Riley wasn't finished. The baby was still singing, still reaching out, and now she was looking directly at the mother bear with those knowing eyes. The massive animal lowered her head until it was level with the human baby. For a moment that seemed to last forever. Bear and baby stared at each other. Two mothers, two babies, connected by something deeper than species or instinct. Then the mother bear did something that made every witness question everything they thought they knew about wild animals. She gently touched her nose to Riley's forehead, blessing the human baby who had saved her cub. The moment the mother bear's nose touched Riley's skin, something incredible happened that no one could have predicted. A warm, golden light seemed to shimmer between them, so faint that some witnesses would later convince themselves they had imagined it. But Maya felt it, a surge of warmth that traveled through her daughter and into her own arms. Riley's eyes widened with wonder, but she didn't cry or pull away. Instead, she reached up with her tiny hand and gently patted the bear's enormous snout. The massive animal held perfectly still, allowing the baby's touch with a patience that defied every instinct of a wild creature. "This isn't real," Tyler whispered from where he was still trying to climb onto a shopping cart. "This can't be real." But it was real, and it was about to become even more extraordinary. The cub, now free from its metal prison, scrambled over to its mother's side. But instead of hiding behind her massive form, it did something that made everyone gasp. The small bear stood on its hind legs and placed its front paws on Maya's leg, trying to get closer to Riley. "He wants to say goodbye," Maya whispered, understanding somehow what the cub needed. She knelt down carefully, still holding Riley, bringing her daughter within reach of the small bear. The cub immediately nuzzled against Riley's cheek, making soft chittering sounds that sounded almost like laughter. Riley giggled, a pure, joyful sound that cut through the tension like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She wrapped her small arms around the cub's neck in a hug that should have been impossible between wild animal and human baby. The mother bear watched this exchange with eyes that seemed almost human in their depth of emotion. She was learning something about the world that challenged everything she had known about the boundary between species. That's when Maya noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. The cub had scars on its fur, old ones, healed over but still visible, claw marks that could only have come from another bear. This little one had been attacked before, maybe by a male bear looking to eliminate competition, or perhaps during a territorial dispute. "You've been hurt before, haven't you?" Maya whispered to the cub, her voice filled with understanding. The mother bear heard the gentleness in Maya's tone and took a step closer. She began making low rumbling sounds in her throat, not threatening growls, but something else entirely. She was trying to communicate, to tell them something important. Riley responded immediately to the mother bear's sounds, her baby babbles becoming more structured, more purposeful. The two were having a conversation that transcended language, sharing information in a way that seemed almost telepathic. Sarah, the elderly woman who had been watching from across the parking lot, walked closer despite her husband's protests. She had worked as a veterinarian for 40 years before retiring, and she had never seen anything like what was happening now. "The mother is telling the baby about her cub," Sarah said quietly, her professional instincts kicking in. "She's explaining that he was hurt, that he's afraid of humans because of what happened before." Maya looked at Sarah in amazement. "How can you tell?" "Body language, vocalizations, the way she's positioning herself," Sarah explained, moving closer to get a better look. "She's asking for help, but not the kind we usually think of. She's asking for understanding." The sirens were getting closer now, but something strange was happening in the parking lot. More people were gathering, drawn by the impossible scene unfolding before them. A small crowd of shoppers had formed a loose circle around the bears and the human family, but no one was afraid anymore. The mother bear's demeanor had changed everything. Her protective stance had relaxed into something almost conversational. She was still alert and ready to defend her cub if necessary, but she seemed to understand that these particular humans posed no threat. Jake, Marcus, and Tyler remained frozen near the cart corral, but their terror was gradually being replaced by something else. Shame. They were watching a baby show more compassion and wisdom than they had displayed in their entire teenage lives. "We should have helped," Marcus whispered, tears starting to form in his eyes. "We should have called someone instead of—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The words were too ugly to say while watching the gentle interaction between Riley and the bears. Tyler climbed down from his perch on the shopping cart and took a tentative step forward. Can I apologize to them?" Sarah nodded encouragingly. "Animals understand more than we give them credit for, but move slowly and let the baby lead." Tyler approached carefully, his hands visible and empty. When he was about 10 feet away, he knelt down and spoke directly to the cub. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm sorry we scared you. I'm sorry we hurt you." The cub looked at Tyler with curious eyes, then turned to Riley as if asking for her opinion. The baby made her soft singing sounds again, and somehow the message was clear. This one is safe now. The cub took a small step toward Tyler, sniffed the air around him, then made a quiet chirping sound. Forgiveness, offered by a creature who had every reason to hate humans. Tyler broke down crying, overwhelmed by the grace he was being shown by an animal he had tormented just minutes before. Jake and Marcus watched their friend's breakdown and felt their own walls crumbling. They had been so focused on looking tough, on impressing each other with their cruelty, that they had forgotten what it felt like to be human. "We need to be different," Jake said quietly, his voice barely audible. "After this, we need to be completely different people." The mother bear was listening to everything, her intelligent eyes moving from person to person as she evaluated each human in the growing crowd. She was making decisions about who could be trusted, who posed a threat, and who might be an ally. When her gaze fell on Maya, something passed between the two mothers. A recognition of shared experience, shared love, shared fear for their children's safety in a dangerous world. The bear made a decision that would become legendary in the small town's history. She walked over to Maya and gently pressed her massive head against the woman's shoulder. Not aggressively, not threateningly, but in a gesture of gratitude and kinship that transcended species boundaries. Maya felt the bear's warm breath on her neck and realized she was experiencing something that few humans ever would. Acceptance by a wild creature, acknowledgement of her worth as a fellow mother. "Thank you," Maya whispered to the bear. "Thank you for trusting us with your baby." The bear pulled back and looked directly into Maya's eyes. What Maya saw there wasn't the blank stare of an animal, but intelligence, emotion, and something that looked remarkably like friendship. Riley was getting sleepy now, the excitement and energy of the encounter finally catching up with her tiny body. But she kept one small hand resting on the cub's head, maintaining their connection even as her eyelids grew heavy. The cub seemed to understand that his new friend was tired. He curled up next to Maya's leg, positioning himself where Riley could still touch him while she dozed. The police cars were almost at the shopping center now, their sirens wailing through the night air. Soon there would be questions, reports, and probably attempts to relocate the bears back to the wilderness. But Sarah had an idea that would change everything. "I know someone," she said to Maya quietly. "A wildlife rehabilitation center about an hour from here. The director is a friend of mine, someone who understands that some animals in some situations are special." Maya looked at the elderly veterinarian with hope. "You think they would help?" "I think what we've witnessed here tonight is bigger than animal control or standard procedures," Sarah replied. "This is about connection, about healing, about proving that the barriers between species aren't as solid as we thought." The mother bear was listening to their conversation, her head tilted as if she understood more English than anyone realized. When Sarah mentioned the rehabilitation center, the bear made a soft sound that almost sounded like agreement. "She knows," Maya breathed. "She knows we're trying to help her find a safe place for her baby." The cub was falling asleep too, exhausted from his ordeal and comforted by Riley's gentle touch. The two babies slept side by side, one human, one bear, both innocent, both having taught the adults around them profound lessons about love and forgiveness. As the first police car pulled into the parking lot, its red and blue lights flashing across the scene, Officer Daniel Rodriguez expected to find chaos. Reports had come in about teenagers tormenting a wild animal, about a dangerous bear loose in a public area, about the need for immediate intervention. What he found instead was something that would challenge every assumption he had ever made about his job, about animals, and about the capacity of human beings to surprise him. A sleeping baby girl with her hand resting on a sleeping bear cub, surrounded by a crowd of people who were witnessing something miraculous. Officer Daniel Rodriguez stepped out of his patrol car slowly, his hand instinctively moving toward his radio to call for backup. But as he took in the scene before him, his training kicked in with a different message: assess before you act. The crowd wasn't panicking. No one was running or screaming. Instead, they were standing in a respectful circle around what appeared to be a mother bear, her cub, and a human family. The atmosphere felt more like a church service than a dangerous animal encounter. "What's the situation here?" Officer Rodriguez called out, his voice carrying the authority of his badge but none of the aggression he might normally use in a wildlife incident. Sarah stepped forward, her years of veterinary experience giving her the confidence to speak for the group. "Officer, I know this looks unusual, but we have a very special situation here. This mother bear and her cub aren't a threat. They're communicating with this baby." Rodriguez looked at the elderly woman with skepticism. "Ma'am, bears don't communicate with humans. They're wild animals and they're dangerous." "Then explain this," Maya said softly, gesturing toward Riley and the cub. The officer moved closer, and what he saw challenged everything he thought he knew about wildlife encounters. The baby was indeed sleeping with her tiny hand resting on the bear cub's head. The cub was curled up peacefully, its breathing slow and steady. Most remarkably, the mother bear was positioned protectively over both babies, not just her own, but the human child as well. "How long have they been like this?" Rodriguez asked, his voice dropping to a whisper despite himself. "About 10 minutes, Maya replied. "Ever since they met, they've been connected somehow. I know it sounds impossible, but..." The mother bear's eyes opened at the sound of the new voice. She looked directly at Officer Rodriguez, evaluating him with an intelligence that made his spine tingle. But she didn't move aggressively. Instead, she made a low rumbling sound that seemed almost conversational. Riley stirred at the sound and opened her sleepy eyes. When she saw the police officer, she smiled and made her soft, babbling sounds. But then she turned back to the cub and gently patted its fur, as if reassuring it that everything was okay. The cub woke up and immediately nuzzled against Riley's hand. The bond between them was so obvious, so pure, that it brought tears to the officer's eyes. "I've been a cop for 15 years, Rodriguez said quietly. "I've seen a lot of things that didn't make sense. But this..." He shook his head in amazement. That's when his radio crackled to life with a voice that made everyone's blood run cold. "Unit 47, this is dispatch. Animal Control is en route to your location with tranquilizer equipment. ETA 3 minutes. The bears are to be sedated and relocated immediately per state wildlife protocols." Rodriguez looked at the peaceful scene in front of him, then at his radio, then back at the bears. He was facing a decision that could define his career and possibly his life. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47, he said into his radio, choosing his words carefully. "Situation is under control. Animal Control should approach with extreme caution. We have civilians in close proximity to the animals." "Copy that, Unit 47. Are there injuries?" Rodriguez looked at Riley's smiling face, at the cub sleeping peacefully in her presence, at the mother bear who was watching him with trusting eyes. "Negative on injuries, dispatch. But this situation is unique. Request supervisor response for consultation." Maya felt a surge of gratitude toward the officer. He was buying them time, giving them a chance to figure out how to protect the bears from a standard protocol. But time was running short. The animal control van was already turning into the parking lot, its headlights sweeping across the crowd of onlookers. Sarah quickly moved to Maya's side. "I need to make a phone call. There's someone who needs to know about this immediately." She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. After 2 rings, a woman's voice answered. "Dr. Elizabeth Warren, Heartwood Wildlife Sanctuary." "Beth, it's Sarah. I need your help with something extraordinary. Can you get to Miller's Supermarket on Route 9 as fast as possible? And bring your mobile unit." "Sarah? It's almost midnight. What's going on?" "I'm watching a 6-month-old human baby communicate with a bear cub. The mother bear has accepted the child as one of her own. Animal control is about to tranquilize them and separate them, and I think that would be traumatic for all involved. There was silence on the other end of the line. Dr. Warren had known Sarah for 20 years and trusted her judgment completely, but this sounded impossible. "You're serious," Dr. Warren finally said. "Dead serious. This is bigger than anything we've seen before, Beth. This could change how we understand animal-human relationships. I'm on my way, 20 minutes. Sarah hung up and turned to Officer Rodriguez. "Help is coming. Someone who understands that not every situation fits standard protocol." The animal control van had parked, and 2 officers were getting out, pulling equipment from the back of their vehicle. Maya could see tranquilizer guns and metal cages. Her heart sank as she imagined those peaceful bears being drugged and dragged away from each other. "Please," she said to Officer Rodriguez, "don't let them hurt the bears. They're not dangerous. Look at them." Riley had woken up completely now and was babbling happily to the cub. The small bear was responding with soft chirping sounds, and they seemed to be having a conversation that transcended language barriers. The mother bear was listening to their exchange with obvious pride and affection. She looked from her cub to Riley and back again, as if marveling at the friendship her baby had formed. One of the animal control officers, a burly man named Tom Stevens, approached with his tranquilizer gun ready. "Everyone needs to step back immediately. We're dealing with dangerous wildlife here." "Wait," Officer Rodriguez said, stepping between Stevens and the bears. "I think we need to reassess this situation." Stevens looked at him impatiently. "Rodriguez, we've got protocols for a reason. Those bears need to be relocated before someone gets hurt." "Look at them, Tom. Really look at them." Stevens reluctantly lowered his weapon and studied the scene. What he saw challenged every assumption he had about his job. The bears weren't exhibiting any aggressive behavior. The baby was interacting with the cub as if it were a puppy. The crowd wasn't afraid. They were amazed. "This is impossible," Stevens muttered. "Impossible things happen sometimes," Sarah said, approaching the 2 officers. "I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell, retired veterinarian. I've been observing this interaction for the past half hour. These animals aren't a threat to anyone." "Ma'am, with all due respect, bears are always a potential threat. Even seemingly docile ones can turn aggressive without warning." As if to prove his point wrong, the mother bear stood up and walked directly to Stevens. The officer tensed, his hand moving back toward his tranquilizer gun. But the bear didn't attack. Instead, she sat down in front of him and extended one massive paw, as if offering to shake hands. Stevens stared at the offered paw in shock. "What is she doing?" "She's introducing herself," Maya said with wonder in her voice. "She's showing you that she's not a threat." Riley saw what was happening and clapped her tiny hands together, making delighted sounds. The cub responded by standing on its hind legs and mimicking its mother's gesture, extending a small paw toward Stevens. The animal control officer found himself in the most surreal moment of his career. 2 bears were essentially asking to shake hands with him, while a human baby cheered them on. Against every regulation in his handbook, Stevens slowly reached out and gently touched the mother bear's extended paw. The massive animal made a sound that was unmistakably pleased, almost like a purr. "My God," Stevens whispered. She's actually trying to communicate with me." That's when they heard the sound of another vehicle approaching. Dr. Elizabeth Warren's mobile wildlife unit pulled into the parking lot, its sides emblazoned with the logo of Heartwood Wildlife Sanctuary. Dr. Warren stepped out of the vehicle and immediately assessed the situation with the trained eye of someone who had spent 30 years working with wild animals. What she saw defied every textbook she had ever read. She approached slowly, her movements calm and non-threatening. The mother bear watched her approach and seemed to recognize that this human was different from the others. This one understood animals in a deeper way. "Sarah," Dr. Warren said quietly, never taking her eyes off the bears. "Tell me exactly what you've observed." Sarah quickly recounted everything that had happened, from Riley's first response to the cub's cries to the current moment where both bears had essentially asked to shake hands with a stranger. Dr. Warren listened with growing amazement. As a wildlife biologist with 3 decades of experience, she had never heard of anything like this. "The baby," she said, looking at Riley. "She's the key to all of this, isn't she?" Maya nodded. "From the moment she heard the cub crying, she's been trying to help. It's like she understands them in a way that the rest of us can't." Dr. Warren approached Riley carefully. The baby looked up at her with bright, intelligent eyes and made a soft cooing sound. Then Riley turned to the bears and made her mysterious singing sounds again. The mother bear responded immediately, her vocalizations becoming more complex and varied. She was telling Dr. Warren something, sharing information in a way that transcended human understanding. "She's explaining their story," Dr. Warren said in amazement. "She's telling me about her cub's injuries, about their fear of humans, about how this baby helped them trust again." Officer Rodriguez looked at the wildlife expert with skepticism. "You can actually understand what she's saying? Not in words, but in meaning. Body language, vocal patterns, emotional resonance. Animals communicate far more than most people realize. And this bear is more communicative than any I've ever encountered." Dr. Warren made a decision that would change the course of everyone's lives. "I'm not going to allow these bears to be tranquilized and relocated," she announced. "This is a unique situation that requires a unique solution." Tom Stevens looked at her in surprise. "Ma'am, you don't have the authority to override animal control protocols." "Actually, I do." Dr. Warren pulled out her credentials. "I'm a licensed wildlife rehabilitator with emergency intervention authority granted by the state, and I'm declaring this a special circumstance requiring immediate sanctuary placement." She turned to Maya. "How would you feel about bringing Riley to visit the sanctuary? I think these bears would benefit from continued contact with your daughter." Maya felt her heart racing. The idea of her baby having an ongoing relationship with wild bears seemed both thrilling and terrifying. "Is it safe?" she asked. "Safer than separating them now," Dr. Warren replied. "The bond they've formed is real and powerful. Breaking it abruptly could be traumatic for all of them." Riley seemed to understand what was being discussed. She reached toward the cub and made urgent babbling sounds, as if trying to tell the adults that she didn't want to be separated from her new friend. The cub responded by pressing closer to Riley, its small body trembling slightly. The fear of separation was clear in its eyes. The mother bear watched this exchange and made a decision of her own. She walked over to Dr. Warren and gently pressed her nose against the woman's hand, a gesture of trust and acceptance. "She's agreeing to come with us," Dr. Warren said in wonder. "She's choosing to trust humans because of what this baby has shown her." Officer Rodriguez realized he was witnessing something that would become local legend, a story that people would tell for generations about the night a baby taught a bear to trust, and a bear taught humans about the true meaning of family. 3 months later, Maya stood at the entrance of Heartwood Wildlife Sanctuary, holding Riley in her arms as they prepared for their weekly visit. The baby girl was now 9 months old, babbling excitedly as she recognized the familiar surroundings where her best friend lived. Dr. Warren met them at the gate, her face beaming with the joy that had become her constant expression since the bears had arrived. "They've been waiting for you," she said. "The moment our van pulled up this morning, both bears went to the fence and started watching the road." The sanctuary had been transformed by the presence of Maya's bears, as the staff had come to call them. What started as a routine relocation had become a groundbreaking study in interspecies communication and emotional bonding. Wildlife researchers from universities across the country had come to observe the unprecedented relationship. But for Riley, it was simply time to see her friend. As they walked along the path toward the bear habitat, Maya reflected on how much their lives had changed. The story of the baby and the bears had spread far beyond their small town. News crews, scientists, and curious visitors came regularly to witness the ongoing friendship. Jake, Marcus, and Tyler had also become regular visitors to the sanctuary. The three teenagers had transformed completely after that night in the parking lot. They now volunteered every weekend, helping to care for the animals and sharing their story with other young people about the power of compassion over cruelty. "The bears changed us," Jake had told a reporter just last week. "But really, it was the baby who saved us all." As they approached the enclosure, Riley began making her special sounds, the mysterious vocalizations that still puzzled scientists but clearly meant everything to the bears. From across the habitat came an answering call, and both bears came running toward the fence. The cub had grown significantly in 3 months, but he still responded to Riley's voice with the same joy and recognition as that first night. The mother bear had become something unprecedented, a wild animal who actively sought human contact, but only with specific humans she had chosen to trust. Dr. Warren opened the gate to the special visitation area, a secure space where Riley could interact safely with her bear friends. The moment Maya set her daughter down on the soft grass, the cub pressed against the fence, reaching through with his paw to touch Riley's outstretched hand. The reunion was magical every time. Riley giggled and babbled, the cub chirped and purred, and the mother bear settled nearby with the contentment of a grandmother watching her family play. "The research implications are staggering," Dr. Warren had explained to the media. "We're documenting communication patterns that challenge everything we thought we knew about animal consciousness and emotional capacity." But Maya wasn't thinking about research as she watched her daughter and the cub play their gentle games. She was thinking about love, about connection, about the miracle of understanding that transcends species. Sarah, now a permanent volunteer at the sanctuary, approached with the daily feeding supplies. At 72 years old, she had found new purpose in studying the bears' behaviors and helping other rescued animals. "How are our special guests today?" she asked, her eyes twinkling, as she watched Riley attempt to share her teething biscuit with the cub. "Happy?" Maya replied simply. "They're always happy when they're together." The mother bear approached the fence and gently touched her nose to Maya's palm, their usual greeting that had developed over months of visits. The massive animal had become as attached to Maya as her cub was to Riley, creating a bond between two mothers that defied explanation. Officer Rodriguez stopped by during his patrol, as he did every week. The sight of the peaceful bears still filled him with wonder, and he often brought other police officers to see what could happen when humans chose understanding over fear. "Any problems today?" he asked Dr. Warren, though he already knew the answer. "Never," she replied. "These bears are probably the most well-behaved residents we've ever had." As the afternoon wore on, Riley began to get sleepy, but instead of fussing, she curled up against the fence where the cub could still touch her. The young bear settled on his side of the barrier, and both babies dozed in the warm sunshine while their mothers watched over them. The crowd of visitors that had gathered throughout the day spoke in hushed whispers, recognizing that they were witnessing something sacred. Families with children, scientists with notebooks, and curious strangers all united in their amazement at the bond between human and bear. Tom Stevens, the animal control officer who had initially wanted to tranquilize the bears, now served on the sanctuary's board of directors. The night in the parking lot had changed his entire approach to wildlife management. Sometimes the best protocol is to throw out the protocol, he often told his trainees. Sometimes you have to trust that there are things in this world bigger than our rule books. As evening approached and it was time to leave, Riley woke up and seemed to understand that the visit was ending. She made her soft singing sounds to the cub, who responded with gentle chirps. Their goodbye ritual had become as touching as their greetings. The mother bear always participated in these farewells, touching her nose to both Riley and Maya before retreating to a respectful distance. It was as if she understood the temporary nature of their visits and wanted to express gratitude for each precious moment. Walking back to the car, Maya felt the familiar mix of joy and sadness that came with leaving. But she also felt something else, a deep certainty that their lives had been forever changed for the better. Riley fell asleep in her car seat, her tiny fist still clutched as if holding on to the memory of her friend's paw. Maya drove home through the gathering dusk, thinking about the miracle that had started with a baby's cry in a supermarket parking lot. The bears had taught them all about the power of innocence, the strength of gentleness, and the possibility of love existing between any two hearts willing to reach out to each other. Behind them, in the sanctuary, the mother bear and her cub settled down for the night. But they weren't sleeping yet. They were making soft sounds to each other, sounds that Dr. Warren had come to recognize as the bears telling stories. Tonight, like every night, they were sharing the story of the human baby who had saved them, who had taught them to trust, who had shown them that even in a world that could be cruel, there was always room for kindness. And in a house across town, Riley Chen slept peacefully, dreaming of brown fur and gentle paws, of friendship that knew no boundaries, and of love that spoke a language older than words. The miracle in the parking lot had ended, but the magic it created would last forever. Some bonds, once formed, can never be broken. Some love stories transcend the boundaries of species, of understanding, of everything we think we know about the world. And sometimes it takes the pure heart of a baby to show us what it really means to be human.